Digital technology, democracy, revolution. Digital revolutionises democracy. Digital democratises revolution. And here's my big line, you can tweet this one if you want. Digital of the people, by the people, and for the people. Who said it? Sounds to me, doesn't it? It resonates. I said it. I said it right here, right now on the stage. Of course, I'm paraphrasing Abraham Lincoln, his 1863 Gettysburg Address, where he says that this nation shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Why then? Why do I conflate government and digital? Why do I say digital of the people, by the people, and for the people? I say this because last year, when I voted in the local election, I realised that the sum total of my democratic expression had been one paper vote in 4 years. One paper vote in 4 years in the middle of a digital revolution. And it seems to me that this revolution offers us a new birth of freedom for our democracy. And I am certain that one paper vote every 4 years does not a modern democracy make. In fact, it does not an ancient democracy make. 2,500 years ago, when democracy was first conceived in ancient Greece in the Levant, it was practiced as more participatory, deliberative, and most important, regular, embedded. Think of the ancient Athenians. All 6,000 citizens would gather together regularly to discuss, to debate, and decide matters of state. And here we are today, another citizen assembly. We're here to be inspired. We want to imagine our future. We want to discuss and debate. But we have no power to decide. Not here, not today. We have our one paper vote every 4 years. The ancient Greeks, so many years ago, and still so far ahead of us in this respect, of course, in this respect. Think what the ancient Greeks bestowed on us. Democracy, this great word. More than that, a philosophy, an ideal, a way of life, a belief that every citizen has both the right and the obligation to participate in society and democratic decision-making. Let's look at the word, democracy, demos, the people, kratos, power, people power, power to the people. And we live in a democracy, don't we? Don't we? We say we do. We believe we do. We have the forms and fashions of democracy. But if you review our democracy against the standard of which it was originally conceived, I say we've regressed. We've regressed in two critical ways. First, what we demand of democracy. Second, in what democracy demands of us. And I say to you, my message today is that we must demand more of our democracy. We must demand that it progresses, it evolves, it modernises, it gives us more, it gives more power to the people. And we must demand more of ourselves. For if we don't demand more change, none will come. If not us, then who? If not us, then who? You might ask yourself, well, Brook, why should our democracy change? We have a system of government that works, a system of government that has served us well, a system of government based on hundreds of years of tradition. Westminster, indeed. We vote, we have rights, we're not an autocracy. Why should we change? If only things were so simple. If only we could go on as we are now. But the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And just as times change, just as culture changes, just as our society changes and technology changes, so too should our democracy. You've all felt this need and necessity, both personally and the greater momentum that is pushing this forward both nationally and internationally at the moment. You've felt it. You've felt it when you see decisions of local and national importance influenced more by the powerful than the people, by the few rather than the many. You've felt it when our elected representatives play party politics for years upon years, seemingly oblivious to the will of the people, on important issues of basic human rights and recognition, of international conflict, indeed of fundamental human existence. You've felt the need for change as well when you feel that distance and disconnection from national decision-making that leaves us feeling disregarded and excluded and without a voice. And the price of not changing is very grim. The price of not modernising our democracy is grim. Study after study tells us that when people feel excluded from decision making, when they feel disregarded, when they feel their voice is not being heard, then the rise of regionalism, insularism, and other such isms are inevitable. And when they finally can give voice in anger and frustration to their views, one vote every 4 years, then surprising and destructive may be the outcomes. We only have to look around the world over the last 18 months to see that. We only have to look around and see that. So if we believe that our democracy should change, what then can we do? I'm going to give you three things. Number one, believe that our democracy can and should change. This is a tough one. We tend to see this as a fixed point around which all our democratic decision-making revolves. I'm going to illustrate this by reference to Thomas Jefferson. Here's a man who basically built a democracy. He wrote the Declaration of Independence for the United States. He was instrumental in framing their constitution. And he saw quite clearly in those early days that many people looked at that constitution with sanctimonious reverence and deemed it, like the Ark of the Covenant, too sacred to be touched. But he also believed, he saw quite clearly in fact, and he wrote that just as times change, just as culture changes, just as science changes, as we become more enlightened, so too must our laws and our government and our institutions change also. So I want you to open your mind to the belief that our democracy must evolve and change. Open your mind also open your mind to the forces that are quite happy with the status quo. The forces that understand the levers of power as it stands and are quite happy to wield greater influence than one person, one vote. The forces that have blocked and braked democratic reform and evolution for centuries and millennia. Big business, lobbyists, political parties, the wealthy, the social elite, traditionalists. All these that have stood in the way of democratic reform. Think how many centuries it took of struggle for all classes to get the vote, for women, for the oppressed. And what do we have after centuries of struggle? What do we have? We have one paper vote every 4 years. Do you want more from your democracy? I do. I want more. The second thing you can do is to be a digital democracy. Digital of the people, by the people, and for the people. What do I mean by this? I mean that we should harness the momentum of the digital revolution to modernise our democracy, quite simply. Digital is a game changer for democracy. It enables us to deal with one of the greatest challenges of democracy, the challenge of coordination. Can you imagine what it was like to coordinate 6,000 Athenians all together in decision-making? How much more complex is it to coordinate millions? How much more complex is it to coordinate millions? And it's this complexity of coordination that has given us a new form of democracy, which is an indirect democracy by representation, rather than direct participation by the people. That proximity for the people, the demos. And where does that leave us? We could have so much more. We could have so much more than that. Digital throws it out the window, throws the arguments of indirect democracy by representation out the window. Imagine the ancient Greeks. Many of them could not attend the assembly because they were too busy working on their farms. Can you imagine what they would do with digital technology? One hand on the plough, ploughing the field. Other hand, mobile phone, voting, just checking out what those ancient Persians are up to. Got to keep an eye on them. In other words, they'd be doing more than we're doing. More than we're doing. And we can have so much more. We can have so much more. We can have crowdsourced legislation. We can have web-based community budgeting. We can have online voting. Hold your horses, I hear you say. Online voting? You're trying to take away our democracy's sausage. No. No, we say no to that. I'm not trying to take away your democracy sausage. I want you to celebrate and practice democracy more often and have that sausage more often. Let's have that democracy sausage a couple of times a year at least. And while you might miss the cardboard ballot box and a piece of paper that goes in it, I know no one will miss a postal plebiscite. Are we serious? We are in the middle of a digital democracy, a digital revolution, and we're asking people to be surveyed by post. This isn't just things I'm making up. This is real, this is happening around the world. When I travelled around the world on a Churchill Fellowship last year, I saw great things in smart and digital cities. The greatest of all was digital democracy happening in real time. And you can Google this. I want you to go home and check out hashtag digital democracy and go and talk about civic technology. 2 examples. In Brazil, they created an online portal, e-Democracia, which allows people to participate in national parliamentary debate, and it's had great success, including sourcing vast portions by crowdsourcing of legislation. And in Seoul, where they say the citizen is the mayor, they understand democracy, they put the citizen first, they've created a suite of digital tools so that citizens can practice and participate and co-create their city and its future. And voting on their mobile phones. Mobile voting. They push out real-time issues for the citizens to vote on, to provide ideas on, and even to propose their own ideas for citizens to vote on. Imagine if we here today had our e-Democracy Australia app, what issues would we be voting on? How would we be holding our representatives to account? What matters would we be putting forward our views for public debate? Just imagine. The third thing we can do is to be active as citizens, asking not what our democracy can do for us, but what we can do for our democracy. The greatest strength of democracy has always been an active citizenry, just as complacency has always been its Achilles heel. We must be active. We must not be content to be told that the government is too complex for the people, not content to be so dismayed by what's happening in political spheres that we withdraw from democracy and turn our back on it. We must be active. And digital technology makes it so much easier, and we can start right here today. We could tweet our politicians, but I believe they ignore them. Too busy composing their own, I understand. So when you find 2 minutes, perhaps in a little break today, you might wish to write them off a quick letter. An email, if you will, which I believe they have to respond to. And you might say, "Dear member, I believe in democracy. I believe our democracy should evolve as times and science and culture changes. I would like to have a greater role in our democracy. I believe that technology can play a part in its evolution. I would appreciate your advice on your policies to advance our democracy fair. Yours sincerely, Citizen TEDx, hashtag digital democracy." And there you have it, momentum. We can all provide momentum to the positive progress of our democracy where the people have a greater role. Power to the people, digital democracy, digital of the people, by the people, and for the people. Thank you very much.